it's an absolutely massive buildup, and the feeling in Washington is that Trump is leaning towards an attack, and that's really, it's kind of incredible that there's been so little debate about it, actually, because it could obviously plunge the region into war, because an attack would lead to reprisal missiles being fired by Iran all over the place to try and hit American-related targets.
I'm joined by the Times US Assistant US Editor, David Charter. David, good evening.
Good afternoon from Washington, D.C.
Before we start, let's hear from Donald Trump. He's just been speaking at an event to mark Black History Month in Washington, where he praised his late friend, the civil rights leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Jesse was a piece of work, I want to tell you. He was a piece of work, but he was a good man. He was a real hero, and I just want to pay my highest respects to Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's a good man. He was actually, as you got to know him, he got better and better all the time. A lot of people, you get to know them, they get worse and worse. Jesse got better and better.
Looks like a great time is being had at that Black History Month event, David, and some warm words from Donald Trump there on Jesse Jackson.
Yes, as I left to come and speak to you, the crowd, the invited crowd of obviously mainly Black Americans for this event, was chanting 4 more years for Trump, which is quite often his supporters do that. They're kind of having fun as much as anything, I think, rather than believing he would get another 4 years, which of course is banned under the Constitution as it stands. But Trump often teases 4 more years. It's more of a sign of a great support for him, of course. And it's great optics for Trump, who has made some inroads with the black vote, which has historically been overwhelmingly Democrat. He's improved it a little bit in successive elections, actually, especially among younger black voters. But recently there's been signs that they are among those voters who are beginning to have doubts because of the cost of living crisis over here. So it's been a very well organised event for PR terms, no doubt.
And let's talk Chagos then. President Trump's criticised the UK Prime Minister's deal to lease the US-UK military base on the island of Diego Garcia. Trump said the US may need it for an attack on Iran. Caroline Levitt, the White House press secretary, was asked about Trump's Chagos Truth Social post today.
The post should be taken as the policy of the Trump administration. It's coming straight from the horse's mouth. When you see it on Truth Social, you know it's directly from President Trump. That's the beauty of this president and his transparency and relaying this administration's policies to all of you and to the rest of the world.
Why does Donald Trump keep flip-flopping on this, David? He's changed his mind again, it appears.
This is really another incredible flip from Trump, because last year when he was with Keir Starmer, he said he was happy to go along with the British plan to hand over the islands. Then in January, he made a post describing it as an act of stupidity, and that was seen very much as caught up in the Greenland row. When Trump was arguing that America should have control of Greenland, he was trying to suggest that as well they should have full control of their base at Diego Garcia and Chagos. But then the Brits did some more diplomacy, and Trump switched again just a few weeks ago. He said that it was the best deal. He accepted it was the best deal that Starmer could make, but Trump said he reserved the right to militarily secure and reinforce the American presence. But even then, it didn't seem like Trump had really fully understood what was happening, because he'd been saying that I don't know why they're doing it. Do they need the money? As if Britain was selling the islands rather than giving them away and leasing them back. And what seems to have happened now is that during the very detailed planning for Iran, there's a huge buildup of American military in the Gulf area. In the last 48-hour period alone, something like 50 planes have arrived, warplanes have arrived in that region, and a lot of the staging, or some of the staging, is done by Diego Garcia. It's absolutely crucial geopolitical base for America. So Trump really seems to have focused intensely on it in the last, or just today perhaps, during some planning, because we know that he quite often does fire off these posts based on the last meeting he's had, and this is absolutely devastating for the Brits, actually, because of all the diplomatic effort that's gone into trying to explain what's happening and why with the handover. And now this seems to make it incredibly difficult for the government to go ahead, because Trump is back on to getting his capital letters locked on again. And he's ended his post in all capitals, hasn't he? Do not give away Diego Garcia.
And look, it's hard to predict Donald Trump. It does leave the UK with a pretty embarrassing situation, particularly as some British Chagosians, accompanied by a former Conservative MP, have actually gone to the island to sort of in protest to create a settlement. They've been ordered to sort of cease and desist by the UK government, but sort of Trump's Truth Social post ties in with that beautifully, really. Do not give it away. Where does I wonder how much attention Keir Starmer pays to this. I mean, I have to say the context from this side, David, is that it does appear that increasingly the political voices in opposition against this deal are getting louder and louder. It's due in the Lords next week. It had been sort of suspended to a point, but there may be a legal way around having to honour the treaty. We'll watch out for that one. Let's talk about Caroline Leavitt and Iran in terms of what she's had to say. Caroline Leavitt is the White House press secretary. Diplomacy is always Trump's priority, she says, when it comes to dealing with Iran. There were talks, weren't they, Monday, I think it was, David, again, on trying to establish some sort of agreement on nuclear power with Iran, between the US and Iran. Here's Caroline Leavitt.
The president has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world. Diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration. He's talking to many people, of course, his national security team, first and foremost, and you know who the members of that team are. And this is something, obviously, the president takes seriously.
Caroline Leavitt there. Diplomacy, I mean, this is a line that we've heard before, isn't it? It is a calming down of the situation, I suppose, David.
Well, actually, the clock is ticking ever more loudly, and it's going to come to a crunch in a matter of days, probably, because the largest US aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, is on its way, trying to get into position near Iran, and that's got a whole group of warships accompanying it, and that's probably the last piece of the jigsaw to put in place, actually, because we know that Trump isn't going to commit ground troops, not American ones anyway, to any attack, and so he'll have all his pieces in place. Within some days. There's talk of a 2-week deadline for Iran to come back with its proposal for an agreement after the talks, as you talked about, in Geneva. I don't know if we're even going to get that far, to be honest. It's an absolutely massive buildup, and the feeling in Washington is that Trump is leaning towards an attack, and that's really, it's kind of incredible that there's been so little debate about it, actually, because it could obviously plunge the region into war, because an attack would lead to reprisal missiles being fired by Iran all over the place to try and hit American-related targets. So it's becoming incredibly dangerous situation and incredibly difficult to predict very quickly. And I know the Democrats in Congress are pleading for some sort of debate or some sort of explanation from the administration as to what the goal of any treaty with Iran would be, because Trump has said he's completely obliterated all the nuclear facilities, and yet he's now saying there must be a deal for the nuclear enrichment to stop, when he says he's already stopped it. So it's a little confusing about exactly what the goal is from the talks, which suggests to me that perhaps the talks are not going to be the main event that we're talking about in a few weeks' time.
OK, well, look, we will keep a close eye on that one. Final one for you. The late night talk show host Stephen Colbert has criticised his own network, CBS, from stopping him from airing an interview with the Texas Democrat James Tallarico during an election period. Let's listen to what he's had to say.
And you know who is not one of my guests tonight? That's Texas State Representative James Tallarico. He was supposed to be here, but we were told in no uncertain terms by our network's lawyers, who called us directly, that we could not have him on the broadcast. Then I was told in some uncertain terms that not only could I not have him on, I could not mention me not having him on. You might have heard of this thing called the equal time rule, okay? It's an old FCC rule that applies only to radio and broadcast television that says if a show has a candidate on during an election, they have to have all that candidate's opponents on as well. There's long been an exception for this rule, an exception for news interviews and talk show interviews with politicians.
There you go. So he's explaining himself there. It resulted in CBS posting the interview to their YouTube channel. That's now amassed over 5 million views, with Tallarico's campaign raising $2.5 million in the last 24 hours. There you go. An amazing about turn that has benefited Tallarico. But what has America made of Stephen Colbert speaking out in this way?
Well, once again, America is completely divided over it, because Colbert has clearly been told he shouldn't put this interview out on air because of this rule. It is actually a law dating back to the 1930s when broadcast TV was starting, and it was regulated to say that you've got to give equal time to every candidate in an election. And this guy, James Tallarico in Texas, is locked in a very close fight in a Democratic primary with a Texas congresswoman called Jasmine Crockett to run for the Texas Senate seat that's coming up in November against a Republican, obviously, when the time comes. Colbert says he's had Jasmine Crockett on before, a little while ago, and cries foul. However, the head of the regulatory body, the Federal Communications Commission, who's called Brendan Carr and is seen as a bit of a Trump loyalist, he's been defending his position to warn CBS that they could be fined, or worse, even lose a license to broadcast this show if they don't have equal time. He's been defending that, saying, look, this has been a law since the 1930s, as I said, saying that this shows why Americans have more faith in gas station sushi than late night TV on the networks, on the mainstream media. So it is a bit of a fight that depends on which side you
sit on.
You back when you try to assess it,
David.
But it is true what Colbert says, that these chat shows are generally pretty light-hearted and have been given a free hand until along comes Brendan Carr, appointed by Donald Trump.
David, thanks so much for being with us. Well explained. The Times' assistant US editor David Charter. You can read David's work at thetimes.com, and of course the work of his American colleagues as well for the Times, times.com, and in the paper on a daily basis.